Hello, my name is Marie Polano. I'm the Director of Analytics and Federal Programs for a large suburban school district in Pennsylvania. Recently, I conducted a study titled Administrators' Perceptions of the Value and Utility of State Assessment Data. It was focused on increasing student achievement as well as data analysis. This presentation is a resource for district administrators seeking to know more about how data is used to address student achievement and what barriers to data use exist at your place of practice. While my focus has been state assessment data, this presentation could be easily manipulated to focus on other types of student data as well. The content of this presentation can be replicated for your use. To begin, allow participants time to discuss the two guiding questions in small groups for approximately 5 minutes. These questions are meant to generate conversation and a level of thinking that will provide momentum moving forward. The two guiding questions are, what do you believe is the fundamental purpose of statewide assessments, and what statewide assessment data is relevant to you? At the conclusion of these small group discussions, the facilitator would then lead the group into the next activity called Infinity Cluster. Affinity Cluster is a LUMA activity or strategy. If you're not familiar with LUMA and you haven't participated in any of the trainings, this is absolutely something that I would highly recommend. It has been hugely beneficial in building consensus and problem solving in my place of practice. The Affinity Cluster has one main focus question, and that question is, how might administrators utilize state assessment data to inform decisions? Now, for this activity, each of the participants will need a stack of Post-it notes, and each small group will also need a poster paper or a surface that they can write on. Initially, to respond to this question, participants will be asked to do so independently. So, independently, each participant will generate as many thoughts and ideas that relate to this focus question as possible. Perfection is absolutely not what we're looking for in terms of responses to this question. Rather, we want to think about ideas and concepts that can be expanded upon later. So after you notice approximately 5 or so minutes that participants have slowed down in their writing and they're not generating as many responses as they were initially, it would be time to move on to the next portion of this activity. The next portion of this activity would be completed within a small group. So we're moving from participants having the opportunity to respond to this question independently by providing their responses on Post-it notes. Each response on a Post-it note signifies one idea or one thought. We definitely don't want multiple thoughts on one Post-it note. After you notice that the writing has slowed and perhaps participants are running out of ideas or thoughts in regard to the focus question, we want to regroup. And within those small groups, the participants will discuss their thoughts and ideas that they were able to provide on each one of those Post-it notes. As they do that, they'll be looking for common themes or similar ideas. Each of these common themes or similar ideas will be grouped together. At the conclusion of that, each of the groups will have to work together to name those various clusters. So after all of the Post-its are combined and similar themes are identified and those clusters are also named, the participants would then share their thoughts with the whole group as to why they grouped those together and the conversations that their group also had. While one group is presenting, the other groups might be thinking about what they notice and what they wonder about the other group's contributions. So another group might say, well, I noticed that you thought about this. I wonder if this over here might also be something to consider within that cluster. So allowing the other participants, while not presenting, to think about what they notice and what they wonder about each of the different groups' work will certainly provide a more collective approach to gathering information about all of the participants and their thoughts. Finally, at the conclusion of this, so this would take approximately 30 minutes to complete, with that initial 5 minutes of the small group discussions and the 2 guiding questions just to get the momentum going. The second portion would be the participants responding individually to the second question prompt of the affinity cluster, and then working within small groups to identify common themes and to name those clusters. And then finally, reporting that information out to the group at large. This would take approximately 30 minutes, perhaps even 45 minutes, with some good quality discussion around data use and how administrators are using data to inform their decisions. Finally, at the conclusion, as a deliverable, specifically for information for that facilitator to take back and utilize later, you may want to focus on these 3 essential questions. These were the 3 inquiry questions that guided my research throughout the study. So the first inquiry or essential question is, what are the administrators' perceptions of the value and utility of state assessment data? To what extent and how are administrators utilizing state assessment data to inform decisions? This one looks familiar. It's the question we use to guide our affinity cluster activity. And finally, the third question, what factors influence the use of state assessment data? When you put all 3 of these questions together, you can easily see the themes that we're looking for. We are looking to extract information that's applicable to the value and utility of state assessment data. We want to know more about the extent and how state assessment data is being used. And we're also looking for information that might help us to eliminate barriers to data use. As such, we're looking for the factors that influence the use of state assessment data. As a culminating activity after the affinity cluster and group discussion, it may be beneficial to allow participants, likely your administrators, to provide feedback on these specific open-ended questions. This might be done via an online survey so that you and your district office team or the administrative team facilitating this could then go in and look for some themes that might help you to identify next steps within your place of practice to provide more and better opportunities for administrators and teachers alike to engage with assessment data. Now, I'd like to share with you some of the findings from my research. It's always interesting to compare and contrast what's occurring within our place of practice to other districts or schools that might be experiencing similar issues or have a similar demographic, or you just want to do a simple compare and contrast. So looking at these results, these are not all of the results. I used a pretty extensive survey to gather information from district administrators at the inquiry site, but these were some of the themes that were relevant and I thought I would share with you today. Under value and utility, state assessment data is somewhat useful in helping educators plan for instruction and informing progress of school and district. Some administrators feel state assessment data is not relevant because it is not tied directly to teachers or courses in their buildings. In regard to extent and how, the survey results indicated, while administrators discuss state assessment with colleagues, they do not prioritize providing staff with feedback on the use of state assessment data. And finally, when considering factors that may influence state assessment data, the administrators surveyed feel confident in their ability to access current student data by using the district's online portal. Therefore, accessibility was not necessarily a barrier to data use. Therefore, it's important to focus on the misconceptions of the value and utility of state assessment, perhaps outside of what some of those factors and barriers may be. Overall, moving forward at the inquiry site, I'd like to share with you some of our future next steps. First of all, we plan to promote and develop a sustainable culture of shared responsibility and ownership that will focus on the utilization of state assessment data to inform curriculum, instruction, and assessment, as well as improve student learning outcomes. If you recall, one of the findings from the research was that some administrators did not feel connected to the state assessment data. As such, at the inquiry site, we plan to focus on the identification of essential standards. These essential standards do not represent all that will be taught in all courses or content areas, but certainly represent the non-negotiables. These non-negotiables are often tied directly to state-assessed standards. So when we identify for each course, each content area, and each grade level, that set of essential standards, we are able to align a continuum of learning for district students. When we look at that continuum of learning, we can see very explicitly the prerequisite skills for each one of those state-assessed standards, and we can also see the endurance that each of those standards has beyond the time and grade level of that particular assessed standard. Therefore, we hope to provide a common understanding of the prerequisite skills in addition to the endurance that these skills have after students have participated in a statewide assessment. We hope that this will provide more opportunity and more discussion around a shared ownership of all students, regardless of what grade level or in what content area each of these students are assessed. So not only will we use state assessment data to inform our decisions in terms of curriculum, instruction, and student achievement, but we will also continue to focus on the whole child. So oftentimes there is a misconception that we either focus on the learning or student learning outcomes, or we focus on the whole child. But instead, we acknowledge that we can use this information to help us to get to know our students better. We understand that in the absence of hope and self-efficacy, that we will never achieve the potential within our district in terms of student learning outcomes. So never are conversations had in the absence of addressing the whole child. However, we also know that there is important data, and some of that may come from state assessment data that can help us to get to know our learners better so that academically, socially, and emotionally, we can better meet their needs. I hope that you have found some information or perhaps learning activities that you can take back to your district and utilize. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information, including my email address, is listed on the first slide of this PowerPoint presentation. So I thank you for your time and attention, and I wish you all well in your educational journey. Thank you.